that track the software piracy rate. And recently, we have a study presented to BIR Commissioner Kim Menares showing that if we lower the software piracy rate in the Philippines in the next 4 years by 10 percentage points, so if we lower it from 69% to 59%, it's going to result to an increase in tax collection, revenue, GDP, and it will produce jobs, high skilled jobs for IT workers.
All right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. When we use legitimate software in our businesses and also over the internet, it will translate to revenue. More of software piracy and the internet when we come back.
Everything we listen to, everything we watch, everything we read, everything we wear. Behind all our favorite things, there is an author, an artist, an inventor. Genuine, real, original. Pushing the limits of imagination and innovation for our comfort, our enjoyment. Making life interesting. Enjoy their efforts, respect them. They help shape our world. Everything we listen to, everything we watch, everything we read, everything we wear. Behind all our favorite things, there is an author, an artist, an inventor. Genuine, real, original. Pushing the limits of imagination and innovation for our comfort, our enjoyment. Making life interesting. Enjoy their efforts, respect them. They help shape our world.
All right, welcome back to Intellectual Property. I'm your host, Attorney Sara Suguitan. Joining me tonight are Attorney Francis Acero, a blogger, and Attorney Ben Marquez from the Business Software Alliance. Just before the break, we were talking about downloading, and I'm going to ask these two gentlemen right here, how do we legitimize downloading? Is that even possible, Francis?
Well, in the States, the copyright people, say the BSA, they work with internet service providers hand in hand. So if, say, a person exceeds his usage by an abnormal amount, because they can track that, they have a baseline, and say you have a spike here, then they can say that, hey, you're doing something funny.
Yes, you have suspicious activity going on from this particular
and they will block
computer.
your account.
Ah, okay. So that's how it works. Is that possible? Can we adopt that kind of procedure here, just so there's no commercial downloading in large quantities going on in certain computers?
On our side, it's really very difficult to block it totally. What we have right now in place is an internet investigator, and we have a web crawler that determines where pirated software is being offered for download. So in other jurisdictions, you have takedown notices available.
Right.
So you send a takedown notice to a particular ISP, and they will block that particular website from doing further illegal downloading.
And also they shame that particular website. They put a notice that this has been blocked on copyright grounds,
Right.
etc.
Right.
So that's also one way of curbing the behavior of those accessing that particular website. You were talking earlier about the NTC hearings. What's your stand about that?
Right. No, I'm in favor of putting a block on illegal use. The problem that I see is that there's a demand for software products from foreign countries, but there's no legal way to get it. I think Apple's demonstrated that if you build the road, like with their iTunes and their software,
App Store,
their App Store, people will come and buy legitimately. But if you don't, then people will continue jailbreaking and they'll use pirated software, and we'll be stuck in this situation for a long time.
They've tried to shut down LimeWire, for example, so many times, but it's still on. So why is that? Will there be an end to entities such as LimeWire?
Well, LimeWire's defense is that it can be used for reasonable third-party use, legal third-party use. And I think that's fair. Even torrents, for example, which are the main channel for distributing pirated software now, they can be used for valid purposes. So if you want to disseminate a large amount of information in a short span of time, that would be the perfect place to do it. But you have to be aware of how these things can be used by other people.
That's right.
The rule is, as far as I know, that if the main purpose is to distribute pirated material, then that's not going to be allowed, and that constitutes a terms of use violation. That the ISP can take action by itself without passing through government channels.
Yes, that leads to more or less contributory infringement. As a matter of fact, I heard from the Copyright Amendment Bill that the version seeks to make punishable as secondary infringers those who make it commercially profitable for those selling pirated discs. Like, for example, mall owners should be secondarily liable because they aid and abet those who are actually selling the pirated products. What's the BSA stand on that?
Well, the current IP law, which is the IP code, was passed in 1998. And it's now 2011. There have been a ton of developments in terms of technology. And now download speeds are astounding. You can download different kinds of works digitally over the internet. And these things are not addressed clearly by our current IP code. So we support the Copyright Amendment Bill, which will implement the Twin Internet Treaties, which have provisions which will address these types of issues. Unfortunately, it's been pending in Congress for the past three Congresses, and now it's in the fourth Congress. So on our part, we're doing our best to attend the hearings and provide our input. Hopefully, it will be passed by this Congress.
Yes, and hopefully it will be passed within the year. And you're right, the internet as a parallel universe just grows out of bounds in terms of time that our laws cannot keep up with how to police the internet, and you have violations coming in that obviously, aside from the plagiarism issue, there's domain name infringement that was brought to my attention just a couple of weeks back. How is that committed, and is that punishable under Philippine laws?
Well, the problem with domain name infringement here, or cyber squatting, is that most cases get settled out of court. So you don't get to develop a body of jurisprudence to guide you on and on. Ideally, you have someone to complain and say along trademark lines that particular mark is being used. In the United States, the development of domain name dispute resolution has evolved along trademark lines. Here,
there's no such thing because we have no convictions yet.
Not really convictions. It's more of a civil case. In the States, if the dispute is transnational, it goes up to the WIPO. But if not, it just gets settled in district courts. Whether or not that is applicable here is something that's still up in the air. At the end of the day, you still have two people, physical people, doing something within a particular jurisdiction. The most recent or the most significant cyber squatting case involves PLDT and PLDT.com, which was a spoof site. The problem is the way internet business is conducted now. It doesn't really matter that
who owns which
cyber domain, for example.
Address.
Right. Which address. So especially with the opening of the .ph website, .ph domain, and all these other .something appellations, it really doesn't really matter.
So you mean before PLDT.com was registered to an entity or was owned by an entity that was not PLDT? So it's possible to, as you said, cyber squat. It's akin to identity theft. So, for example, I can register your client's name, Microsoft.ph, and I'm not actually Microsoft.
Which happened.
It happened. It's an actual case.
Although I was not the person who principally handled it, it was my law office at the time, and there was an entity in the Philippines that, or an individual who registered the name Microsoft with a suffix. I can't recall the suffix right now. We had to rely on the WIPO dispute resolution policy to have that to reclaim that particular address.
Yes, but you sent cease and desist letters to that entity.
Initially, yes.
Initially,
we
and they
sent
still didn't
no
take
reply,
it out.
so you have to avail of the WIPO dispute resolution policy on domain names.
But is it convenient to go through the WIPO dispute name resolution? I mean, the entities are in the States, for example, and WIPO is based in Switzerland. So was everything done online?
Everything was done online. All the submissions were done online.
The litigation
the complaint,
was
yes,
online.
online. And then you have a hearing officer or a dispute resolution or mediator appointed by the WIPO, and it was resolved swiftly.
It was resolved
Yes.
swiftly, so that's good. So hopefully the IPO will also follow.
Hopefully,
I mean,
yes.
there are
Hopefully.
many cases here locally under the .ph domain registry, for example, where there is cyber squatting.
Well,
Would you know? Would you have
yes,
data?
there are a few recently actually that have come up. Part of that involves the cosplay scene, of which I'm familiar with some of the characters involved. But that that going aside, no, the problem is more when it infringes on names with secondary meaning, like Microsoft. It's acquired secondary meaning, and if you use, for example, Microsoft, if you say Microsoft, you're a water supply station, and you use the soft there to represent your water, then that'd be a different story.
Because it's along different classes of
Right.
goods. So there
Right.
is a possibility that the case will actually be resolved in favor of the water purifier.
Right. But but obviously when you look at everything, it's obviously
Obviously, an
Yes,
infringement,
right.
a copycat.
Yeah.
Right.
Diba? A copycat.
Right.
You were telling us earlier about the education efforts of the BSA. What other efforts do you do in order to make everyone in the country use legitimate software?
Well, aside from doing road shows in schools, we have plans of going to different local government units and engaging also with the Department of Trade and Industry, so that we can educate businesses on the proper use of software in the business setting.
Yes, and maybe you can also solicit from them, direct, legitimate software buyouts from the BSA. But most of your member companies, are foreign software companies.
Which have, Microsoft has a presence in the Philippines, and our other members have resellers in the Philippines. So it's very easy to get in touch with them.
But do you also develop local software developers? Do you have members who are...
Oh, yeah. We are actually on the lookout for our very first local member for BSA.
Are you hopeful that you're going to find
Well,
one?
we have a lot of talented
Yes.
people here in the Philippines. In fact, we have the Philippine Software Industry Association,
Okay.
a local organization of software developers. So, I'll take this opportunity to invite software developers. If they want to become a member of the BSA, we can get in touch with us.
As a member, what other benefits does a member company enjoy from the BSA?
Well, aside from benefiting from our profile and, of course, promoting them as a member of BSA, in the event of any issues as far as software infringement is concerned, we definitely have the expertise to assist them.
Yes, and to prosecute violations.
To address those issues,
violations.
yes.
Yeah. So do you also train, for example, people to identify whether software is pirated in a particular...
We have a pool of investigators, trained investigators,
So
and
it's
market
private.
researchers.
Okay,
Yes,
it's
private investigators.
But for example, the NBI might need capacity building, or the IPO when it finally gets police powers from Congress.
We constantly conduct trainings for NBI, PNP, and the Optical Media Board. In fact, in 2005, those three organizations banded together to form what is called the PAPT, or the Pilipinas Anti-Piracy Team, specifically to address the issue of software piracy, because they realized that software piracy is a menace to the economy, and it deprives the government of tax revenues, economic development. So they banded together to address that particular issue.
I-
So
I
we
hope-
still work with them up to this day.
Okay, I hope you don't mind. Can you explain to us more how use of illegitimate software affects us economically? I mean, it's hard for them because all a consumer sees is this is expensive and this is cheap. So yun lang yung values that they play around with.
Perhaps the